Hey guys, so we're gonna do a quick video lecture just on the key events that lead to the start of World War II. If you are doing this, hopefully what you've already done is watched, or not watched, but gone through the guided notes on the rise of Hitler, how he became chancellor, the tools he used to solidify his power, and then also uh, the beginnings of the Holocaust. All that is required understanding to make sure we understand how we get to the point where we see a war start. So what you'll need is a handout on the World War II timeline handout. You'll need this video lecture, and then you'll be turning the handout in based on your notes, and that will basically make sure you've done it, and that will get you credit for the assignment. All right, so we'll start in 1936. In November of 1936, Japan and Germany signed this special agreement, an anti-Kuntarum pact. Basically, what that basically means is they agreed to fight the spread of communism. Okay, why is that a big deal? Well, during the Great Depression, lots of ideas became incredibly popular. So part of the reason Hitler rose to power is because during the Great Depression, people were looking for help. Well, communism had become also popular because people were starving, they were hungry, and so suddenly it looked a lot more appealing. There's this notion that everybody has everything they need to survive. So Germany and Japan will sign this agreement to specifically fight and stop the expansion of power of the Soviet Union. The reason they sign this agreement is because, let's be honest, if you don't know this, Russia is ginormous. It stretches from Europe all the way to the Pacific Ocean, where Japan is. Japan and Russia had gone to war not once but twice before this. So there was a history between Japan and Russia. And these two powerful industrialized countries were on either side of Russia, meaning that if Russia got out of hand, you could have two strong, powerful military nations to kind of stop them. So the significance here is that here's the thing: one, it creates the alliance that becomes the main alliance during the war, Germany and Japan, right? But the other thing it did too is this: we weren't sure what to make of Hitler, and if you've done your research, in the beginning, Hitler was actually somewhat embraced by many people in Western Europe in the United States because, at least publicly, he was anti-communist, meaning he could be a powerful friend against a common enemy like the Soviet Union. More on that later. Now, what really gets us going towards the war is March of 1938, something called the annexation of Anschluss. So Anschluss is just, or I'll just make it easy, it's Austria. Austria is a country that's just below Germany. If you don't know much about Austria, they share a great deal culturally in common with Germans. They have a similar language, religion's relatively similar, culture, dress. So the argument that Hitler basically makes is this, right? We're these kind of very similar people. Why don't we just unite the two of us together? And then go back a second. If you looked at Hitler, who just made an agreement a couple of years ago to fight the Soviet Union, you're a little bit more comfortable with it, right? And the people of Austria welcomed Hitler with open arms. So instead of Hitler invading Austria, because that's not what this is, he's invited in, and the people of Austria voted on him coming in. They held parades, they waved flags. This picture you see here, right? That's literally a German military officer getting like the keys to the city of a nation of a city in Austria. So here's the thing: significance is two things, right? The big one is that it's a clear violation of Treaty of Versailles. Part of the Treaty of Versailles is that Germany was not allowed to expand. They had land taken from them. This is them gaining land again. All right. One of the other ones that was covered in that previous one was Germany had remilitarized, had built up their military again. So this is a pretty big deal. But again, people were willing to took a little bit a look the other way because Hitler was going to be an assistance in fighting the Soviet Union, so no one really cared. All right, this is when things really start to get sketchy. So it's September 38. So we're not talking big gaps. We're not talking really months here. Um, Hitler will seize Czechoslovakia, which was a country that had been created just before this. It was one of the nations that was created as part of the Treaty of Versailles. So here's the thing: if you were to go to Czechoslovakia, there's a large number of people who still speak German in Bohemia, which is kind of this region that, if you kind of look at this map over here, it's this kind of region that, like over here. So Hitler goes, well, listen, I was interested in uniting the German-ish people together in Austria. I want to continue that trend and bring Czechoslovakia in. Now, here's where things get weird. Okay, they have a meeting. This is a highlight thing. The Munich conference. So the Munich conference was a meeting between basically Hitler, England, France, a couple other nations in Europe. And at the meeting, Hitler will say to the rest of the world, if you give me Czechoslovakia, I will stop. All right. So this becomes known as the appeasement policy. Now, listen, the analogy I always make is this. You ever see that little kid flipping out in the grocery store or Target or Walmart and they're screaming, yelling, and then you ever see that parent like give them something to make it stop? Oh, here's a candy bar. Oh, here's that toy you want. Whatever. Just please stop embarrassing me in public. Now, here's the thing. Like the analogy you want to make here is like, so that little kid, what do you think they get out of that experience? If I act like a jerk in a store, and throw a hissy fit, I'll get what I want. So the problem is you gave Hitler what he wanted. And so many people have looked at this moment in history and go, you only gave him, you emboldened him. You gave him more reason to keep going because you weren't willing to stop him. Now, if we had time, we would dive into why this wasn't actually a dumb decision. All right, because what it did was it slowed him down a little bit. It gave them more time to prepare. They weren't ready to fight him. All these things that were true that at the it's easy to forget those things when we look at what Hitler goes on to do, but the reality was this was a moment to stop him, and they probably knew they weren't stopping him. They just knew they were buying themselves time, and that was just as important. All right, so the appeasement policy is the significance of this. All right, August of 39. So we're jumping ahead a little bit. All right, so here's the thing. If you go back to the very first thing we talked about, there was that anti-communism pact. Hitler will sign an agreement with the Soviet Union and Joseph Stalin, the leader of Russia, that they will not be aggressive towards one another for 10 years. So if they're supposed to be enemies and supposed to be people who will fight each other, and Hitler's supposed to be our friend in stopping him or stopping the spread of communism, this doesn't look like that's really what's happening here, does it? All right. So they agreed not to fight each other for 10 years. That is what we publicly knew at the time. What we found out later, there was a secret agreement between them. All right, the secret agreement that was not publicly known at the time was, all right, Hitler and the Soviet Union basically said, okay, each of us will get to basically divide up Eastern Europe and control it ourselves. So that kind of tells us from right there that Hitler was planning something. All right, he needed to take Russia out of the fight if there was when the war started, and he also clearly expected to get control of parts of Europe because he was willing to split them up with the Soviet Union / Russia. All right, so the significance is this. All right, one, like I said, it kind of tells us now that we knew he was up to something. And two, it also meant that Hitler took one big country that he might have had to go to war with and took him out of the fight for now. All right, this is going to change a little bit, but yeah, this is kind of like this was a big deal. People couldn't believe this happened. All right, you can tell from a political cartoon, and the caption says, "Wonder how long this will last." All right, our honeymoon will last. Right, it doesn't. All right, preview. All right, so September 39 is the invasion of Poland. Now, this a couple key terms here. We want to understand the term Blitzkrieg. All right, that literally translates to lightning war in German. So basically, what happens is this: Hitler will do a fast, quick invasion of Poland. It only lasts for basically 3 weeks. The reason they call it the Blitzkrieg is because Hitler realized something that you don't need to march soldiers across the country, right? You don't need them. That's not how you advance. You use airplanes and tanks. So this new technology that allows you to go, particularly with airplanes, you can have them fly in advance, bomb your enemy, and then have the tanks roll over them, and the tanks will go 30 miles an hour, much faster than an army can march. So he was able to basically run over Poland. Now, part of the reason Poland was easy to be run over is one, they're physically a flat country, so like it's really easy to run tanks over that. And two, Poland was a brand new country. They didn't have an army. They had been promised by England and France, we got you, we'll protect you. And then when the war started, we don't have you, we don't got you. All right, they had literally been begging them to send soldiers to protect them, and England and France like, no, we're good. And then they invade. All right, so the significance of this event is that this is the official beginning of World War II. As a result of this, England and France will declare war on Germany. Now, the other thing I want to throw in here briefly is that if you look at the map up here, you'll notice there's not only there's arrows coming from this direction and arrows coming from that direction. The Soviet Union also invaded Poland from the other direction. So they basically began, the two of them, their special friendship was blossoming before our eyes, and they took invaded Poland and split it up. Now, This one slides might be a little more confusing. I have May of 1940, and then I talk about June. So these events start in May and end in June. So here's what we want to know: the invasion of France. That sort of starts in May. What it really happens is that Hitler will invade Belgium and the Netherlands. These are two countries, all right, that are kind of the easiest path into France. He will invade both those countries in about 3 weeks, and then he'll be on in his way into France. A couple things you want to remember here. The things I want to stress about France. France, all right, um, was arguably the third, fourth most powerful country on the planet. They were a global superpower. All right, they got conquered in basically 3 weeks. That's how powerful Hitler was. If you've ever seen the movie Dunkirk, all right, that's actually a pretty famous story in which basically the Nazis, the British had a massive army, several 100,000 soldiers in France, but they knew they couldn't beat German, they couldn't beat the Germans, so they realized they have to escape, but the German army is rapidly approaching, and they almost trapped almost the entire European British army in France. If they had done that, the war's over. All right, so here's the deal. Why is this so important? Because Hitler was able to take out France so quickly, it left him only really one country left in all of Europe he had to be worried about, England. So if he wanted to conquer Europe, he is super close. Speaking of, August through October of 1940, this is known as the Battle for Britain or Battle of Britain. All right, so basically, the deal is Germany has the intent of invading England at some point to end the fight in Europe. They take out England. Now, the problem is England is an island, so they can't just roll their tanks and airplanes over there. They have to weaken England first. What he really wanted was this. He really wanted England to quit. He was hoping if we bomb you enough, you don't want to fight and you'll surrender. That's not how the English work. You see that political poster, the propaganda poster? There were a bunch of years ago, everyone was making T-shirts about keeping calm and doing something on, right? Keep calm and sing on. Keep calm and bake on. Whatever it was, everyone was wearing these shirts. Ugh. Anyway, that was because that was a famous propaganda poster that told the English, suck it up. It will be fine. We can do this. All right. So literally every night they would bomb England. As it says here, 40,000 English people will be killed over the course of these months. Civilians, not soldiers, civilians. Um, it fails. The importance is that England was able to hold on. They were able to resist surrender. And Hitler had to then go, oh crap. So then here's the England's weakened now, but still in the fight. And just some pictures to give you an idea of how devastating this was. Like entire city blocks destroyed. People built bomb shelters in the city of London itself. People often would sleep in the subway, the tube, the underground, because it was safer, because it was so far below ground the bombs wouldn't get them. Now, the next big thing we want to talk about is Operation Barbarossa. I'm going to try to run through as fast as I can. So, remember how Germany and the Soviet Union had this agreement they're not going to attack each other? Well, Germany cheats. They will invade Russia, and that was a mistake. All right, they attacked Russia because they needed oil. They needed the food supply. There was these large areas of grain production in Russia, Ukraine, and truthfully speaking, go back to Holocaust here for a second. They were interested in the large Russian Jewish population in Russia. They could then exterminate. So the problem was this: if you remember, Napoleon tried to do something very similar. He tried to invade Russia, and winter killed him. Same thing happens here. They invaded. But it was so cold. We're talking like negative 35 degrees. It would freeze the engines, they would seize, the fuel lines would freeze. They couldn't get their equipment going, and all the technology they had was useless for them. The significance is this. Germany they lost like 950,000 soldiers in this fight. Just to put this in perspective, all right, Russia's going to lose 24 million during the war, but the point was Germany couldn't afford all that. Russia could or was willing to. And so this becomes a major turning point, and the war begins to turn against the Germans because now, when they lose, they have to start retreating, and that means the Russians start chasing. All right, the last big event we want to talk about here is Pearl Harbor. All right, there's a terrible movie about it with Ben Affleck. Do yourself a favor, don't watch that. But what you want to know is Pearl Harbor was the Japanese, who we were not at war with, did a sneak attack on Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. Why did they do that? Two reasons. One, we were trying to stop Japanese expansion in Asia by denying them oil and money. And two, this was the major naval base of the U.S. in the Pacific. So they knew by bombing it that when we did join the war, we'd be really weakened. So the significance is pretty obvious. As a result of this, we will join the war against Germany and Japan and help turn the tide and ultimately lead to victory. All right, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you got your notes and turn them in when you're done.